Contrary to popular belief, not everything that happens in Vegas stays there. I wouldn't be a very good reporter if I didn't return with some stories from NBA Summer League. Plus, I had to bring back receipts for expense reports. But I can assure you I was all too happy to leave the 112-degree heat behind. This is your morning Buzzcast for Thursday, July 17th. I'm SBJ senior writer Joe Lemire filling in for Abe Madcore. The NBA Summer League continues to grow, certainly in relevance for the basketball community, but also, it seems, in popularity among fans. While some of the weekday afternoon games predictably drew sparse crowds, the Thomas & Mack Center and Cox Pavilion filled up pretty well at other times. That was most notably true for the two games Cooper Flagg played in, for example. But I watched Bronny James play on Monday evening with LeBron sitting courtside for the game. Pretty good atmosphere that night. Wemby and several of the Spurs showed up to watch their Summer League team play as well. And in conversations I had with an assistant coach and a scout, both reinforced just how much Vegas becomes the epicenter of basketball for a July fortnight. My trip coincided with a series of league-sponsored events around innovation. It was my second time at Summer League. I last made the trip in 2023, and in those 2 years, the enterprise programming had notably grown. Launchpad, the NBA's 4-year-old startup accelerator, had its pitch day on Monday night, with 5 young companies sharing results of pilots conducted with various NBA league and team properties. It's a great event, and Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum was there to tout the idea that, quote, "For us, innovation is critical." You can read my story on sportsbusinessjournal.com for more detail around how the league steered 3 of the technologies into new growth areas. In 2 cases, the founders themselves hadn't yet considered that new path. The room was full, more folks from teams than in the past, and I saw innovation leaders from across the sporting landscape, particularly internationally. Executives from FIFA, World Rugby, FIBA, the German Football Federation, the USOPC, and more. Also on the agenda was a sports medicine series with interdisciplinary speakers sharing expertise with their peers. And just after I left was a new data analytics forum to share business strategy ideas around the league. And there was also the return of the Tech Expo. I like to joke that for a tech reporter like myself, showing up to the Tech Expo, it's like the best speed dating around. More than 30 companies setting up tables in one gym. Quick, easy, great chance to see everybody, both individual companies and what new product upgrades they may have, plus discovering new startups and taking a step back to see the overarching trends in areas of interest. I got to personally demo a half dozen of them. Check the site and socials later in the week for a video as I got a robot massage, experienced a dry cold plunge, and even got a body composition scan in a van parked outside. The Summer League games themselves prove a valuable testing ground for the NBA for other reasons too. I learned about efforts to create immersive audio experiences and another initiative to help automate officiating. Read a lot more about that in the weeks to come. And now, over to the W, where in advance of this weekend's All-Star Game, WNBA executives and the WNBPA are meeting face-to-face for the second time as part of the CBA negotiations. The New York Post cited sources that discussions have been lagging up to this point and that the two sides remain far enough apart that players are, quote, bracing for a work stoppage if the pace of talks doesn't ramp up exponentially in the near future. Union sources are said to be optimistic, however, and that player participation in the talks is expected to be high. This is, of course, a very active player group that is mobilized efficiently and effectively for social justice and other initiatives, outwardly giving a very strong appearance of consensus. We'll see how that goes. As for the game itself, our Rachel Axon will be in Indianapolis reporting on it all. In the hand-picked scrimmage format on Saturday night between Team Collier and Team Clark, unfortunately, there's a chance that Team Clark might be without its namesake. Caitlin Clark appeared to re-aggravate a groin injury, making her status this weekend unclear. She did not play in last night's game against the Liberty, and her absence would be a big blow for the All-Star Game. It should draw fairly well regardless, but given that Clark is definitely its biggest attraction, and most especially the fact that the game is in her home of Indianapolis this year, so her missing it would certainly be a shame. One other WNBA note, the game in which Clark was injured was at a sold-out TD Garden as the Connecticut Sun drove up I-395 to Boston for the special event. It was the second straight year the Sun sold out a game at the Garden, and it only intensified the conversation around whether the Sun might be better served long-term in the bigger city market. The Mohegan tribe that owns the team is reportedly considering whether to sell the team, but at last word, it has a preference to keep the team in Connecticut. Definitely a storyline to keep your eye on. President Trump was again in the sports headlines for soccer, golf, and college sports. No, Chelsea FC did not Photoshop him out of its official Club World Cup championship photo, as some internet conspiracy theorists indicated, although it does seem they deliberately selected a picture in which Trump was largely obscured in the background. But staying focused on the British Isles, new RNA CEO Mark Darbin said the Trump-owned Turnberry course in southwest Scotland had not been ruled out of consideration for an Open Championship, but would not be receiving hosting duties anytime soon. Darbin noted that he met with the president's son, Eric Trump, a few months ago, and while the conversation was productive, he noted that Turnberry faces logistical challenges, not political ones, from getting back into the regular Open rotation. It last hosted the major in 2009 before Trump acquired the club, but as the Open, and golf generally, has grown, it now needs more substantial upgrades around the course itself, what Darbin called the, quote, road, rail, and accommodation infrastructure in the area. This year's Open Championship at Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland is now underway. The 2026 tournament will be at Royal Birkdale, and the 2027 edition will be in Scotland at St. Andrews for the 31st time. The 2028 host has yet to be revealed. Returning stateside, CBS Sports has reported that Trump plans to sign an executive order in the next few days in an effort to establish national standards for NIL among college athletes. It was not immediately clear what those guidelines might be. This comes a few months after there was indication Trump would establish a national commission to engage on the topic, although that has not yet happened. Concurrently, a House subcommittee has advanced a bill called the SCORE Act, which passed along party lines with Democrats dissenting over concerns that it would transfer too much power back to the NCAA. In fact, Representative Yvette Clarke voiced her concern about the bill, saying, "We're here today to consider the SCORE Act, but a title like the NCAA Wishlist Act would better reflect its true objectives." It's a biting remark, and the commentary about its title makes me think once again that no group of people love acronyms more than congressional committees. For those of you keeping track at home, the SCORE Act stands for Student Compensation and Opportunity Through Rights and Endorsements Act. As Abe shared on yesterday's Buzzcast, the MLS is bringing its All-Star Game to Charlotte in 2026. We still don't know precisely when, but in a news conference formally announcing the exhibition game, Commissioner Don Garber said, quote, "It'll come after the World Cup, probably one of the big events, if not the big event, coming out of the 2026 World Cup." A lot of logistics remain in figuring out the schedule of the whole season, especially with the expectation of a few dozen MLS players competing for their national teams. MLS will pause its schedule for 39 days from June 11th through July 19th, and those not participating in the World Cup may need a period to ramp their activity back up to game intensity, a small mini-camp, if you will. Our Alex Silverman has more details on sportsbusinessjournal.com, and I'll just mention a couple more here. MLS reiterated a pledge that expansion clubs will all get a turn to host an All-Star Game, but the newly created Major Events, Games, and Attractions Fund from the North Carolina state government has allocated $2 million to help defray costs of organizing and hosting the event, which is estimated to be just less than a third of the total outlay. North Carolina Secretary of Commerce Lee Lilly appeared at the announcement to discuss this new program, and what stood out to me was his comment that this fund is derived from sports gaming revenue. We've heard, ever since PASPA was repealed, that sports betting could help the bottom line of state governments. And now here's a good example of that money going directly back into a local sports property. Another MLS All-Star note, this year's game will feature Old Spice branding on the front of the kits, thanks to a new sponsorship deal with Old Spice replacing Target, whose deal for those rights expired after last season. The NHL released its 2025-26 regular season schedule. It'll begin with an ESPN tripleheader on October 7th, starting with the Florida Panthers raising their Stanley Cup banner and then playing the Blackhawks. Penguins Rangers and Avalanche Kings will follow. TNT will host a doubleheader the next night, leading with Bruins Capitals and followed by Golden Knights versus the Kings. There'll be 2 games in Sweden, with the Penguins and Predators playing a pair of regular season games in Stockholm in mid-November. And also notable in the new schedule is that because NHL players are returning to the Olympics, the league will take an 18-day break in February for the 2026 Milano Cortina Games, pausing from February 6th through February 24th. Sticking with TV for a moment, the overnight ratings for Tuesday's MLB All-Star Game on Fox and Fox Sports Streaming are in. It averaged 7.2 million viewers, pretty close to last year's number of 7.44. The peak was actually a little bit higher, 8.1 million in that 9:15 to 9:30 window, up a little bit from that $7.9 million for the peak last year. Certainly the drama of this year's event, plus that wonderful Hank Aaron tribute, will make this one a bit more memorable. An SBJ programming note, this week on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast, Austin Karp and Molly Cahalan are joined by SBJ's Adam Stern for a deep dive into the reported $150 million a year F1 and Apple Media deal offer, and what it could also mean for both ESPN and UFC. Also, the duo speaks with ESPN's head of direct-to-consumer, John Lasker, for a look ahead to the upcoming DTC launch and the growth of ESPN+. A breakdown of MLB's All-Star festivities, including Home Run Derby viewership and reception, and the technological additions to this year's All-Star Game. I, for one, enjoyed seeing cameras on all of the umpires for a couple of cool new views. All that and more on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe. Available now wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your Buzzcast for Thursday, July 17th. I'm Joe Lemire. Thanks for tuning in. Abe Madcore will be back tomorrow. Have a great day.